Hi, Wyoming teachers and students. We're here today with Rob Krieger, who is with the Wyoming Energy Authority, and I'm going to turn it over to him to talk about the Wyoming Energy Authority and what he does with that. So, Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got into energy and how you got and what the Wyoming Energy Authority does.
Yeah, thanks, Laura, and thanks for having me. Um, yeah, so actually born and raised in Casper, Wyoming, graduated from Natrona County High School. For those students that are listening to this from that area, they'll know hopefully that oil and gas is pretty prevalent in that community. So both my parents, my mom was a landman for an oil and gas company for over 20 years. My dad does investment in that space. So really energy and oil and gas in particular were kind of just ingrained in me at a young age and something that was certainly interesting. Um, so my background, though, I worked for our governor for a little while. I was a senior advisor to him for about 5 years, his first term, and then a little more after that. And then this job opened up. So the executive director role at the Energy Authority. And for folks, the Energy Authority, kind of the simple way to think about it is we are like the state's Department of Energy. We are what I like to say is the hub of energy activity here in the state. So we focus on really two main tracks. The first would be policy, so laws that need to maybe be changed or added to help advance energy solutions here in the state of Wyoming. And the other side of that is if we get those policies in place, is there financing mechanisms and incentives that the state can provide to advance those projects. So we manage a large sum of taxpayer dollars at the Energy Authority, a little over 250 million, to put towards energy projects in the state that go from all sorts of sources, from our fossil fuels to some of the newer generation opportunities, as well as infrastructure like transmission and pipelines. So really, again, we're just the hub. We have our hands on pretty much anything oil and gas or energy or mining related. So.
Now, we were talking before this call about trends that the Wyoming Energy Authority is it's tracking, and I would really be interested in to hear what Wyoming's energy future looks like in 5 years, 10 years. You know, what is coming up that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, that's a great question and one that we try to tackle every day. It's an ever-changing landscape on the energy front. So Wyoming is very lucky to have the resources that we do. So we rank number one in the country in coal production. We have the largest coal mines in the entire world that sit here in Gillette, Wyoming. Uh, so number one in the country for that. We're top 10 for oil production, top 10 for gas. We have the largest wind project in the country being permitted, a lot of opportunity around nuclear. We have the largest uranium reserves, trona reserves. So what do we do to make sure that the state stays ahead of the curve as we see market trends and those sort of things taking shape? Um, no question that coal is facing some hard times and has for a while. There's certain, I like to lay out a graph to folks that shows the state or the country back in 2001, over 30 states in this country, their main source of electric generation came from coal. Majority of that coal was mined here in the state of Wyoming. You look at that in today's picture, and that over 30 states has now gone down to 10 states that use coal as their main source of generation. Wyoming is still one of those. We still export our coal to over half of this country, but the amounts of coal are drastically lower than they were 10, 15 years ago, which is troublesome for Wyoming because that's a lot of jobs, a lot of revenue that the state has brought in. So what can we do? Well, most of the changes have gone to natural gas. That's not a bad thing for Wyoming. As I said earlier, we're top 10 in natural gas production in the state, and we also have some of the cleanest gas in the entire country that a lot of folks are interested in if their concerns are maybe climate related or something like that for why they're shifting off of coal. So that's one thing. The other thing is new forms of energy that are coming online. So we are very much focused on nuclear and what that can mean for Wyoming as we talk about baseload power. We're looking at ways to integrate more gas production, more gas-fired plants that maybe integrate with some renewable projects that are around the state. So, when the wind's not blowing or sun's not shining, we can fire up a gas plant and the grid stays stable. So those are some of the things that we're certainly looking at and trying to stay ahead of. We think nuclear in particular, there's a lot of discussion around that right now. A lot of states interested in nuclear. We have first of its kind, and what I'm excited to always say is America's next reactor will be in the state of Wyoming, and that's in Kemmer, Wyoming. But we also have some other projects that we're looking at micro nuclear reactors. So if you think about the big stacks you see, from, back in the day, those are light water, large reactors. These are going to be much smaller. So we're talking, 350 megawatts and under, more different uses. So you can tie them directly into the grid. If you're a mine and want to come off the grid, you can do your self-generation by buying those reactors and having, the operations take place at your plant. So really, long way of answering your question. The markets are always shifting, but we're trying to keep Wyoming ahead of that and make sure we continue. A quick fact that we produce 12 times the energy we use. We're trying to keep that going and making sure we fuel the country.
So you mentioned I think you said 350 megawatts for one of these micro reactors. How many homes about would that? I mean,
Yeah.
give us some perspective of how much energy that is.
That's a great question. Yeah, the good marker I kind of go is about 1 megawatt is roughly 800 to 1,000 homes.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, when we talk about obviously 350 megawatts, that's what that Kemmer project is. These other micro reactors are about 50 to 75 megawatts. So we're talking, large amounts of energy. I'm sure, folks will hear a megawatt to 1,000 homes and quickly realize, well, we got a lot more megawatts than we have homes in Wyoming, but our industrial load is very, very large with our mines, and some of that, the utility folks have to focus on how to power our energy infrastructure and some of the manufacturing that takes place in this state. So that's where you see that mega wattage needing to be higher. But we also export to a bunch of states in the West our electricity. So again, we want to generate it here and send it out across the country.
Okay, so I have two questions. We export this energy and you see those giant energy lines going across the prairie, right? How efficient are those? Are they insulated? Tell us a little bit about those if you can.
Yeah, that's the transmission lines are the technology continues to advance, but yeah, there's different sizes, different capacities. I would note that there is a project that is in Rawlins, Wyoming, that is finally fully permitted and rocking and rolling. It took about 20 years to get this thing going, but it stretches all the way from Rawlins all the way to Los Angeles. So it
Oh,
goes
wow.
through a bunch of states, a bunch of obviously private land, federal land, state land. So that process takes a long time. But the idea is that the electrons made in Wyoming are going to ship all the way out there. So that's obviously a newer transmission line, much more efficient. But we also have pipeline infrastructure in the state that we're working on building everything from natural gas pipelines to CO2 pipelines to hydrogen, if that ends up being more of a player in the future. That sort of infrastructure, again, continues to grow and the technology continues to advance. A cool project that we're working on currently is to try to be ahead. We know that infrastructure is going to build out, but we have a project with a company out of Casper, Wyoming, that looks at using AI to detect pipeline leaks before they happen.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
really advancing pretty quickly. And really, for these companies, that's a big deal. Safety is number one on these pipelines because that is a huge hurdle for them. So again, trying to stay ahead of that curve, and we know AI is going to be a big player. So if we can try to use that technology to make our energy assets even safer, that's a win-win for everybody.
Well, and I think that's what a lot of the protests in the past decade have been about is the safety for the community and the company of some of the oil pipelines, right? So if you add AI to it and you can detect a micro leak right away, then you don't have a safety issue anymore. And so what a great use of technology. I love that because not only does it feed energy to the entire country, but it feeds it more efficiently. I was at a Wyoming county commissioners meeting years ago. I was waiting to speak and I was listening to the previous speaker, and they were talking about our cost of transport for the natural gas versus Texas's. and ours was a lot higher actually. I don't remember the unit, but the unit per the our cost per unit was much higher than Texas. So these pipelines are probably going to make a big difference to that, aren't they, Rob?
Absolutely, and we're actually conducting a study right now in consultation with the state of Utah and the state of New Mexico to figure out. Obviously, we have a bunch of gas here in Wyoming. We want to get that out, so we were trying to figure out pipeline infrastructure, one to those states, but also to the west, to more importantly potentially have a an export potential to other countries that want to buy our gas. I was lucky enough to go to Japan about a month ago with our governor and some other folks from Wyoming to talk about the energy assets that we have and how that could maybe meet the needs of a country like Japan, who imports 98% of their energy. I mean, massive, massive amount of their energy is from outside their borders, and they have some concerns around emissions and whatnot. But we have what is called differentiated gas in the Pinedale area that's being produced at extremely low methane intensity on that gas. So the cleanliness of it is really unparalleled amongst other gases. That's interesting to Japan. They would love to take that gas. So now we just got to figure out how to get it to the coast and then, of course, ship it out to them. But those are things, again, that we look at every day because it's if we can build that infrastructure out, we have the resources in Wyoming to continue to fuel, again, the country, but hopefully other places as well.
Well, if we can get to New Mexico, you're almost to the Texas Gulf, right?
That's right.
And then you have to decide, well, is it worth the Panama Canal cost to get through the Panama Canal, or do we go through go south of Africa to get over to
Yeah.
Japan? And so the shipping cost there is also expensive, but if you go out of Portland or Seattle or LA, it's probably less expensive. But those states need to be assured that it is a cleaner energy, right? Because they're very
Well,
concerned about that. And I know they've griped about our coal in there,
yeah.
messing up their ports before.
Well, my take is, and I don't know how much California wants to raise this flag, but they as a state use a large chunk of Wyoming natural gas.
Mhm.
So our take is if it's good enough for California to use, let's make sure it's good enough for Japan to use. So yeah, it's but real quick on the Gulf thing too, it was interesting meeting with folks in Japan because they talked about the current routes and if we did have to go through the Gulf and the Panama, how it adds 50 to 80 days to get to Japan, which is just I had no idea that was the amount of time we were talking. So
Wow.
yeah, ideally we can get it off our west coast and ship it to them much, much quicker. So
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Um, and my guess is after Fukushima, natural gas sounds a lot better, right? I mean,
yes, yeah,
they're an earthquake prone country, and nuclear plants are a little scary for them.
yeah, they talked about that they have, I think it's 14 reactors that they have decided not to shut down in Japan, understanding the load growth that they're going to be seeing. But yeah, they're a little concerned about nuclear, and fair enough after the Fukushima incident. But we're working on micro reactors that are much smaller, and that did sort of pique their interest. Is okay, maybe these are smaller, the safety mechanisms are much greater to where if something does happen, this thing shuts down and you got to take care of it afterwards. But it's really, I don't want to say bulletproof, but dang near. So yeah, I mean they're definitely gas was their main interest, no question about it.
That's exciting news. So on top of that, you've mentioned the load increasing for Japan. You've mentioned that Wyoming exports a lot of energy out. And being from the tech industry, I'm interested in how many megawatts data centers use, for instance, because we have Lunavi, NCAR, and Microsoft, and then Meta's going into Cheyenne as well. Cheyenne is a really great place to put data centers because it's not too hot and you get the cold in the winter. It's on I-80, I-25 intersection, so you've got lots of fiber internet lines going through there. And then in addition to that, now we have a plethora of energy in Wyoming. So talk a little bit about that if you would. The rising need because of AI, quantum, increased number of data centers, um, and then just how Wyoming is positioned to fill that.
Yeah, so the load growth, I mean, It is going to be historical. I mean, there's different figures out there, so folks can argue if it's this many gigawatts or that many gigawatts, but I think unanimously they all agree it's going to be on the gigawatt scale where we're going to see this massive growth needed to fuel the AI and the quantum computing pieces. To your question about how much energy that uses, a good example is the NCAR that you mentioned. It's roughly 100 megawatts. Think about that as 100,000 homes, right? Being fueled right there, just outside of Cheyenne, or I guess on the edge of Cheyenne. Um, and that's frankly kind of small, which is kind of
Yeah, it's
wild
a
to
small
think
data
about.
center. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, I know like Amazon's new data center that they're looking at, they haven't decided where they're building it, but the power needs for that center are the equivalent of the entire city of San Francisco for
Wow.
one center. I mean, it's just crazy. Wyoming, we have a couple things that are very beneficial to us to bring in that hopefully that economic growth via data centers. One, we have obviously good climate. The coolness is very helpful for those centers. Two, we have fairly affordable energy. And three, we actually have an exemption on our sales tax for data centers. So that's helping attract those as well. Now, how we power it is going to be tricky. So, our utilities, mainly Black Hills Energy and Rocky Mountain Power, this is something they're trying to grapple with every day. That how do you bring on a new large load, uh, invest that money to build out that infrastructure, build out that generation, but at the same time, not impacting your residential rates and those
Mhm.
consumers for energy costs. So we're at the heart of that discussion with our legislature right now, trying to figure out how can we best do this. So I think Black Hills is a great example of how this has worked out well. You have Microsoft come in needing a lot of energy and quickly. So the way they are doing this is they're paying what's called a tariff rate. It's a Section 400 rate that is governed by our Public Service Commission, where they essentially pay a higher rate than everybody else, but they are getting that power, no questions asked. So Black Hills as a company, um, if that data center were to not happen or something like that, they have recouped their costs.
Hmm.
So for example, the folks of Cheyenne, their residential rates, they would not see a drastic increase if that load were to come off the system. So that's one thing, the large load. The second side of that would be what we call third-party generation or behind-the-meter generation, non-utility generation, which is, say you had a data center on some land you owned and you did not want to go through the utility. Well, is there a way you can stand up your own, say, natural gas generation asset or a micronuclear reactor or something like that to fuel that center? And how does that fit into the whole grid? If you have excess power, if yours goes down and you need it fueled, and you have to take from the utility, just how all that would work. And again, with two main lenses. One is welcoming new business and making sure we have that economic growth and don't miss out on these opportunities. But then two, making sure we really don't impact the current ratepayers and our residential consumers. So it is a large issue, and we are not the only state grappling with that right now. But as I often try to give this analysis that Rocky Mountain Power is, roughly 75% of Wyoming's grid. It's taken them 100 years to build out the infrastructure for a gigawatt of power. In their queue for Wyoming, in the next 5 years, they have requests up to 10 gigawatts. So
Wow.
5 years to add 10 gigawatts when it took 100 years to build one. So it's going to take an all hands approach to get this done, but it is, like I said earlier, it's historic growth that we're going to be seeing.
Okay, with all this growth, let's switch over to careers a little bit and what the careers are that are in in the industry, in the energy industry. And let's talk, and would you talk a little bit about degreed careers and non-degreed careers so that we include all students that might be interested in uh, college or non-college education?
Absolutely. Yeah. Obviously our university has a lot of good, like a petroleum engineering degree, great geology degrees, those sort of things to stay in the state of Wyoming and work for, oil and gas companies, coal companies. Um, Also in the trades though, that side. So I toured what's called a TRISO nuclear fuel facility out in Virginia. We're hopeful that we're going to build one of those in the Gillette region. Um, those don't require a 4-year higher education degree. They, have some certificates you got to get, and they're good paying jobs. I mean, we're talking 80 to $100,000 right off the bat. So I think that's a big piece where Wyoming continues to excel. And another cool piece about that too is when we're seeing this new uh, forms of energy or different uses, our community college system are really trying to step up to figure out how do we gear degrees, whether that be, just a 2-year degree, to make sure those students can go into these places and in these jobs. So I think tons of tons of jobs directly in the field. Related to the energy field as well, though, on the manufacturing side, we have tons of manufacturing. I'll just point out a company called L&H Industrial in Gillette.
Mhm.
Really cool story from their beginnings were around oil and gas manufacturing. Then they saw the coal boom. They pivoted to do some of that, which they still do. Then they've also pivoted to fixing rotors on wind turbines. And a fun story, their CEO, um, I was coming back from an event in Florida and I get on the plane and I see him there and I was like, the heck are you doing here? And he said, well, I just got done from a NASA launch. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What are you doing there? And they build components for some of the, space stations and those sort of things, all in Gillette, Wyoming. And again, their core of their business is around energy. So there's just so much that you can do. Also, I'd point out back to the university, our College of Law. There's a lot of great opportunity if you're wanting to practice law in the energy space. They have great school over there to work on that as well. So it's really pretty endless in the energy space for education and opportunities.
And I know of another manufacturer, and I don't have permission to use their name, so I'm just going to say it's anonymous, but all they make are tubes. And they bend them, they make tubes to the right shape and bend them and move them and it's custom work for and their business since they moved to Wyoming has grown significantly because of the energy industry.
Great.
And I think they're going to be the next L&H. They're really, really big. And it's going to be an amazing growth year. I mean, if we can just get from a tech perspective, if we can just get semiconductors somewhere in the U.S., hopefully in Wyoming, with the rare earth minerals, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit and what that might look like. But if we can just get those in the U.S. Wyoming is really positioned uniquely for just some amazing economic growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the rare earth side, um, it's really fascinating to see this move and this growth uh, in that industry in America, but in particular in Wyoming. you know, the mining of the rare earths isn't necessarily the difficult part. It's the refining and processing and separation of those elements to turn into different magnets that go in, your iPhones or you name it, semiconductors, as you talked about. So we have really 3 big projects going on right now in the state of Wyoming. One of which is outside of Wheatland. It's called the Halleck Creek project, American Rare Earths. They're a massive mine, and they're trying to figure out a separation plan as well. That we've invested some of the money we manage in that project. Another one is the Bear Lodge project, been around for quite a while, up in the Sundance area. That material is already mined, so we're helping this company build a processing plant in Upton, Wyoming, to work on separating those materials and whatnot. And then lastly, and the most recent one we've worked on is with Ramaco outside of Sheridan, Wyoming, uh, they've found a decent amount of rare earths, not only within their coal mines they have there, but also underneath their coal beds that they want to try to access. And again, stand up a separation plant and those sort of things. So, I think a good stat that is always really puts this in perspective is 90% of that processing currently takes place in China. And we are trying very hard to make sure we can onshore that here Obviously, we would love that to be in Wyoming, but in general into the United States. And Wyoming does have a pretty big lead on that. Working with the administration in DC, they're very eager on some of the projects we're doing too to help fast track those on some permitting sides. Because to your point, they've recognized that, the semiconductor, the chips manufacturing, all of this, we cannot lose that race. And so we can do it in Wyoming and do it in America, which we're trying to do. So
Well, and cybersecurity experts have said, and this is probably one of my biggest fears, but they've said that, for students that don't know, the largest amount of semiconductors worldwide are made in Taiwan. China would very much like to invade and take Taiwan back. It is a sovereign nation at this point in time, but China does not believe it should be. And in the world of war and war demonstrations, China has amped up its efforts to intimidate in the sea between Taiwan and China. And if that invade, most cybersecurity experts believe that invasion is going to happen in the next 7 to 10 years. And if that does happen and we don't have semiconductors, the entire world's going to be in a world of hurt because you can't make a computer without a semiconductor. And we're about to hit quantum computing and AI large language models like you've never seen before.
yeah,
So I think it's exciting that we have these rare earth minerals here that we could make semiconductors, but these plants take a very long time to get moving and up off the ground because you have to have the clean rooms, the really clean rooms, and we don't have one in Wyoming. I think the closest clean room is in Boulder, Colorado, isn't it?
I think
All
that sounds, yeah,
aerospace.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, and to your point on Taiwan, that was a part of our international trip. So we did Taiwan actually before we went to Japan.
Mhm.
And thankfully we were able to ink and sign an MOU, a memorandum of understanding and an agreement with them to work on best practices on what they've done in the semiconductor space and the quantum computing space to make sure us as Wyoming and the United States can catch up. But then the other side of that is our reciprocation to them is how can we help them with the energy needs that they have and how can we share those best practices. So yeah, we signed that agreement a little over a month ago, and we're, to your point, you're right. A lot of folks and national security experts are warning about what is likely to take place in the next decade there. So, we're trying to partner with them to make sure we can help keep them, get the energy they need, but then they can share their best practices with us as well.
Well, and wouldn't it be great to even partner further so that maybe a Taiwanese company can come here and help us build a semiconductor plant and maybe because they're helping us, maybe it's a joint ownership or something, but it would be it would be pretty amazing, but it could probably take 20 years to put one of those plants up. I would be my guess. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, none of this moves fast. I mean, when we back on nuclear, we announced the project in Kemmer in 2020. The goal is to have that operating by 2030. If we hit that, that is historically fast. I mean, that is really, really quick for a new nuclear reactor. So yeah, these things they take decades to build, but got to start at some point. So
yeah, I mean, it's like eating an elephant one bite at a
yeah,
time, right?
right. That's right.
Although I really like elephants and I hope none of us ever eat them. Um, so, do you have any final words, Rob, for the students of Wyoming that are going to be making these cyber safety videos about the energy industry in Wyoming?
Yeah, just if they ever have questions, reach out. We have our website. We also have a lot of people in-house that are experts more in specific areas, if whether that be our fossil fuel portfolio or nuclear and rare earths or our utility space with transmission. We have experts on all those areas. So I'd love for anybody to reach out, any students to reach out if they have questions. And then as students look to what's next, whether that is to go to college or go into the trades or go straight into a job. Especially in the energy space, like I mentioned earlier, Wyoming has an abundance of resources. You really can't find a state that has the amount of diversity amongst our energy assets as Wyoming does. So I, recommended them to go in eyes open and see what's kind of cool and gets them excited. And And the nice thing about Wyoming is we're so small, so there's a good chance you know somebody or somebody knows someone that's in that industry and can help connect you and give you an opportunity. So appreciate you having me here today, and it's a lot of fun.
Thank you. And if a teacher would like to have somebody from Rob's office speak virtually to their classroom so the students can ask questions, have teachers email me. You have my email address. Email me at info@cyberwyoming.org, and I will connect you with Rob's office and make sure that that you get what you need with your virtual session. So thank you for that offer, Rob. That's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody have a great day.